Hey everybody, it's Brian Heater with Engadget. We are entering the home stretch for CES 2013.
Almost done.
Terrence O'Brien, first time on stage, right?
Yeah, this year, first time on stage.
For a very special reason.
Yes.
You are our resident Linux nerd.
I am, which is kind of sad, because I'm really not that big of a Linux nerd, but more than most of the people here.
You will get any kind of piece of hardware, and the first thing you do is run Linux on there.
Yeah, first thing I do specifically is try to install Ubuntu. So
this is a very, I mean, we're both very excited about this interview, but we have Mark Shuttleworth from Canonical. And I wanted to say, as far as I know, I haven't really done my homework, but as far as I know, you are the first person that we've had on the stage so far who has been into space.
It's great to be here. It's nice to have my feet on the ground with you. So I've taken the trouble of doing the installing of Ubuntu for you on this piece of hardware.
that is amazing.
There you go.
Save me all the trouble.
Yeah.
I mean, this is your big reveal for the show. I mean, we've been waiting a long time to take a look at this thing.
Well, we've all been waiting a long time for the reveal. It's been 3 years of work getting Ubuntu distilled down for mobile devices. The core OS work has been ongoing and public for a long time, but this is the interface. This is the touch handheld version of Ubuntu.
And you guys did a pretty good job, actually, despite the fact that you're pretty public about your development of keeping that UI under wraps. There wasn't any leaks, really. There wasn't any, too much public information out about it.
Well, I guess you could say we've been hiding in plain sight because the phone and the tablet and the TV all deeply informed the design of the desktop, which has been public for 2 years now. So many of the elements just click into place, I guess, and people have been kind of excited at how natural it feels.
Well, the first question I have about this, though, is why a phone? Why a phone OS? It's an you're building an ecosystem, clearly, but it's a marketplace that's dominated by two very major players. You have iOS and you have Android, and then you have your BlackBerries and your Windows phones that are really struggling to make number 3, and now you're going to throw your hat in the ring. So, I mean, what makes it different? What makes you think
What are you bringing to the table?
Yeah, what are you bringing to the table here?
Right, so I guess we have a couple of really distinctive, unique things that are part of the vision. The first is that this really is the future device. This becomes your tablet, this becomes your desktop, this becomes your media center, your smart TV.
So consistency across devices?
Right, so we're the only form factor, or the only platform that really has a design vision that spans all 4 screens that's totally coherent.
So is it really just essentially a scaled down version of what we're seeing on the desktop?
Yeah, I'll be glad to take you through it. And it's kind of, think of it as distilled, it's like the distilled sibling of the desktop, and the tablet.
It's like the best of.
Well, yeah, exactly, greatest hits. So the tablet, which will take the wraps off in due course as well. The tablet fits into the family.
Take us through it. I mean, that's why we're here, right? We want to see it in
I
action.
think pretty much, yeah.
All right. So for those of you who are familiar with Ubuntu, there's some immediate similarities, right? We have indicators up at the top left. That's pretty standard. All of your favorite applications show up over here. So this is kind of like the Unity launcher. And in fact, this phone is running the full Ubuntu operating system. So this really is a desktop in your pocket, right? In fact, it's exactly the same as the server operating system and the cloud operating system, which is really unique.
So it even has all the same UI framework. So that you could, in theory, take the same core and just dump it on a desktop, and it's no different.
Right. So applications, 90% of the application code can be reused. We expect apps to be able simultaneously to show a phone face, or if you've docked it, a phone and PC or desktop face. So it's a pretty flexible framework, yeah.
So if I'm a developer, I mean, this is great for me because I've essentially just developed for any number of devices.
Right. So you can use this as a development workstation. You can push code straight from this, running code straight from this to the cloud, and have it run on the cloud. It's a kind of unique level of convergence that we've never seen before.
Is the idea here to bring people who are already using Ubuntu on their desktop over, or are you hoping to win over new users as well?
Well, so I think what we have here is a genuinely beautiful, simple, kind of unique smartphone interface. And the operators that we've been talking to love the idea of using this for an entry-level smartphone. Most of their customers in that segment are using their smartphones just to make voice calls, maybe SMSs. There's a very natural way here to kind of lead them up to using data services, the web, email, Facebook, Twitter, and so on.
When we talk about entry level, are we speaking about just ease of use, or does economy also factor into that?
Sure. We think we can get to lower bill of material devices with this because it's all native. So that really helps the operators who are targeting kind of their bottom 30% of the smartphone segment. And then on the very high end, we've got this unique enterprise story of being able to dock this. It becomes a full desktop. It also becomes a thin client. So Windows applications stream right to it. And with LTE, you can stream Windows applications really beautifully straight to a mobile user who's docked this in a hotel room.
I mean, that brings up a really good point, and certainly this is something that obviously Microsoft is trying to do with Windows 8 is, in the past we've seen devoted mobile operating systems, tablets, and smartphones docked into a keyboard, but you're running one app at a time. You can't multitask. You don't have the full keyboard experience, or you don't have the full desktop experience. But here, even on a phone, essentially, if I can connect this theoretically to a bigger screen and a keyboard, I've got a computer in front of me.
Right. So this runs LibreOffice. This runs, of course, any browser of your choice: Chrome, Firefox, any WebKit-based browser. They're all running on this device when you dock it up. It does a great job with remote applications. So Windows applications just feel very natural in the environment. It's just a surprising level of coherence and cohesion.
For Canonical, what has the biggest hurdle been in terms of, we'll start by speaking about the desktop, which has been around for some time. What's the biggest hurdle been towards, user adoption? And, I assume some of that's going to transfer over here, but what's keeping people from making that leap?
So the desktop environment clearly is very heavily defined by the Windows ecosystem and environment. Our impression so far is that the mobile ecosystem isn't nearly as entrenched. People do like to say, okay, you've got these big heavy hitters in Android and iOS, but if you do surveys of end users, if you put this in front of them, they say, I really want that. I want to take that home.
But certainly there's a monetary investment. Certainly, they've downloaded these apps and they've gotten used to the UI. So it's still difficult to make that transition, perhaps not as difficult as on the desktop.
Sure, time will tell. But we can study these things fairly accurately, with extensive user testing and surveys. So we have some sort of scientific basis for thinking that there's a good opportunity there.
You feel like this is every bit, if not more intuitive than the heavy hitters?
So just chatting with someone who has spent a bit of time playing with the device, and they said that it felt a bit old school going back to their existing phone, and then they pulled out an iPhone. So I thought that was a pretty good.
This is the future.
Pretty good sign, yeah.
Are we talking about? So let's actually look. What device are we running this on right now?
This is the previous generation. Device. Yeah, this is the previous generation Galaxy Nexus. So it's about a year old. The CPU and GPU in here are what operators are telling us they will ship in entry-level smartphones at the end of the year, which is our kind of target ship date. So that's why this makes a great development environment for us. We know that we're hitting our performance goals. It's a really beautiful. It's beautiful,
Yeah, let's get some more of this. That's why we're here, right?
It's kind of smooth, very buttery, very beautiful, and
so
that's
you're moving
without
in
any
all different
significant
directions to get different content.
Right. So if you're familiar with the desktop, right, we have scopes, different kinds of content that we aggregate on the home screen or in the dash. And we've presented that.
There was a phone number on there. Anyway.
Oh, that's all mock-up data. Okay. Don't worry about that. So we aggregate all different kinds of data. This is a very important story for operators, right? Because we integrate content very beautifully. And we've deliberately done it so that we can support multiple stores at the same time. So, for example, you could have, in theory, Google Play, Amazon Prime, an operator-led content portfolio, all integrated so the user isn't sort of jarringly jumping between these different stores. It's all kind of neatly presented and aggregated. So that's very important. We have some unique stories. So, for example, we have both native applications and HTML5 applications. That goes down really well. HTML5, there's hundreds of thousands of those, and that gives us a good story. But native applications give you a sort of a richer neater feel, if you'll see that we generally have no buttons on the screen, so there's a standard UI mechanism for how you get your Chrome when you want your Chrome.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I like that I'm seeing here is, certainly these have become content devices. Our smartphones have, and it seems like the idea here is keeping the content as front and center as possible and pushing everything back to the background.
Right. We did this first on the desktop, if you remember. Right. We completely tore up all the Chrome in the desktop, pushed things into one very elegant kind of top bar. So for any kind of content-centric application on Ubuntu, it has all of the screen real estate to itself. That's great for the web. It's great for any kind of composition or editing kind of application. And that philosophy kind of carries through here.
I mean, if anything, it's easier to do here because you've got much less screen real estate to work with, so there's less space for that Chrome.
The discipline and the thinking about the discipline was one of the core things that was driving the shape of Unity on the desktop right from the beginning.
So you had this great template in place that just made a pretty natural transition to the smartphone.
Sure. I mean, by thinking about the whole portfolio as one, we kind of naturally got there, yeah.
So, you're talking a little bit about tablets and moving over into smart TVs. It seems like, as far as transitions go, the transition from smartphones to tablets is much easier than from desktops to smartphones.
Sure, and in due course we'll take the wraps off a beautiful tablet interface that has some really unique capabilities and fits perfectly into the family.
So can we talk about hardware beyond a Galaxy Nexus?
Sure. So some significant milestones. We have silicon partners who have stepped up and said that they will invest in optimizing this platform for their silicon. That's really important. We're a small company. We will need to partner wisely, but we have some really great companies that have stepped up and said that they'll take a bet on Ubuntu on the smartphone. So that's one significant step. We had about 500 developers sign up and download the SDK in the first 24 hours, which was pretty good. And we've had some handset manufacturers ask to get the platform up on their devices to show to carriers. So for a week post launch, that's pretty extraordinary.
Certainly when we talk about these third and fourth place operating systems, the biggest hurdle there is applications.
Yeah.
Has app development been an issue for Ubuntu in the past?
Sure. Developers are very driven by addressable market, so volume is going to be the key question. We think there's a very substantial addressable market, and our ability to span both the kind of low end of the market and the high end of the market is kind of unique. From a developer point of view, there's some amazing pieces falling into place. Obviously, HTML5 levels the playing field to a certain extent, but native application development is really important too. BlackBerry 10 developers, the next generation BlackBerry 10 developers, be a trivial port of the application from BB10 to this device. That's one nice thing. Also be a trivial port for Android applications. We'll make it really easy for Android developers, many of whom are already familiar with Ubuntu, to target the device. And then all the big gaming frameworks, the GL gaming frameworks, are already starting to target Ubuntu on the desktop. We've seen Valve and Steam obviously making a lot of noise about Ubuntu this year. Unity, which is a big one in the mobile world, now also targeting Ubuntu. So across that full range, enterprise apps, games, HTML5 apps, and Android apps, we have really good stories, and we'll make it easy for developers to choose to support the platform.
That actually does touch on something else I want to ask you about, which was the gaming development in Steam. And there's been a lot of talk about the Steam box and whether or not it's going to run Ubuntu. Are you guys actually working closely with Valve and getting software up and running?
Yeah, we've built a very strong relationship. They're passionate, kind of a unique company in the way they're very free-ranging in their thinking, and so that's made it a lot of fun to engage. And it's the Steambox and so on. It's their product to talk about, not mine.
Yeah, you can't really tell me too much about it.
When you talk about these hardware partners, I'm wondering how closely you're actually working with them. Certainly, we've seen the Google approach is at least in terms of smartphones has been pretty hands-off aside from these Nexus devices. So let's put this operating system out there and let's see what people do with it. Is the plan all along to work really closely with the people making the hardware?
Very much so. The the launch process for us has to be a careful one. So we will select probably at most 2 carriers, 2 handset manufacturers for the initial launches.
You're in a nice place when you get to select them, as opposed to the other way around.
Yeah, but we'll still have to choose wisely, our partners, and plan carefully how we approach the market. But I think it's a brand new day in a brave new world.
Where do you guys expect to launch first? Are you going to launch, in Africa and Europe and U.S.? Where do you think you guys are going to actually end up partnering first?
Well, we've had carrier interest from every continent, which is a great sort of initial step.
So Antarctica, that's we're going to see the first Ubuntu phone.
Yeah, the airwaves there are amazingly uncongested, but so I can't say right now what we'll decide. But the core thing for us is to pick partners that understand the sort of regulatory compliance process, because that's very new for us. And so we'll need some big partners to help us get through that process.
Terrence, you touched on a good point there, which is I'm wondering, and Linux traditionally has been a great operating system for developing nations. I'm wondering if you see this being, Ubuntu on the smartphone, if you see developing nations being a good market for you as well.
Sure, very much so. And so just like Ubuntu on the desktop is hugely popular, I think we ship on a very significant percentage of branded PCs that go into India, China, Brazil, Africa, and this would be a natural extension for us in those markets. And those are surprisingly sophisticated markets. The impact of the smartphone. These are countries that are not held back in a sense by legacy, either on the desktop or in terms of fixed line connectivity and so on. So there'll be some interesting things that we can do. Mobile payments got pioneered in Africa, and I happen to be, I invested in some companies that are doing that, and so I'm very confident that you can get rapid adoption of futuristic technology in emerging markets. It's a great crucible.
Sad to say I'm getting the wrap-up sign right now, but really had to ask you before you go, how does going to space compare to going to CES?
Well, it's great to have a successful launch regardless.
The risks are maybe a little bit bigger, when you're in a rocket hurtling toward the cosmos, perhaps, but...
You only think that if you haven't set foot inside the Engadget trailer, I think.
It's fair enough. Mark, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a lot of fun.
There you go.
If people want more information on this, where should they go?
I guess Ubuntu.com has everything that we've said loudly and clearly.
Great. Thank you so much. And we've actually got one more interview coming up.
Just one?
And then some podcasting.
Fun.
And then some partying.
Oh, yes, the party cast, and then some actual partying.
And then some sleeping. So we've got Georgie from Node coming up to talk about his Kickstarter project. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you soon.